Good day, mate.
G'day, mate.
How you going, Luke?
Very, very well. How's everybody else? Everyone happy tonight?
Yeah, good.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Luke, it's Lake.
It is Lake. I'm actually okay with it now. I've been called much worse things in the past, so Lake's all right. I'm happy to just settle on that.
I think that's reverse psychology. He wants us to think he's happy with it so that we stop teasing him because it's not having an impact. But just so you all know, it definitely has an impact.
Either way it works, it doesn't really matter. Whether you believe me or not, it's going to work. So you believe what you want to believe. I'm going to get my result.
Sounds like something Luke would say, not Lake.
I actually just made it seem like I put a lot more thought into this than I actually have as well. Maybe that's reverse psychology. Maybe I really have.
Maybe you shouldn't have told us.
Maybe a lot of things, yeah. We got a
On
pretty
that
good
bombshell.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good start. We got Pete, we got Urban Gecko, Phil here.
Yep.
Let's go. Yep, Phil's here. Awesome. Oh, Ben's just joined. We're looking good.
Yeah, kick off, Luke. You want to give the update?
Yep, can do. There's as it has been for the last couple of weeks, there's still a lot going on. But it's all good stuff, and we're sort of nearing the end of a lot of it now. So that's cool. It's all starting to take shape. So we're looking at different avatar options at the moment. And it's really to bolster what we've got, not to replace it. But we're looking at some other options to accompany what we've got in Citizens and Ready Player Me, and we're looking at some photorealistic options, which are downright freaky but cool. We're also working on gamified elements for the core platform, and obviously for the Vault itself. So we'll let that be a bit of a surprise, but just adding some elements to the core Vault that, some fun activities. And there'll be some movement and stuff that is required for that to happen. So that's about all the clues I'm going to give you on that one. Apartments obviously have been released in a very early version, but there's still some finishing touches to get through. So that they've been done, that code's been written, but we were waiting for the back end work to be completed, and that happened today. It's just in final testing at the moment. So the apartment changes are there, and they're merged to that track. So we'll fast track that in getting that out now that that's all there. So basically, once we've tested these back end changes, the next phase of the apartments can be released, and that will enable permanent texture changes. And there's a whole bunch of fixes, just things we've come up against when we've actually gone to release them, and things we've noticed and bugs that have been reported. So there'll be some big improvements in apartments in the next week or so. Citizens are ready as well. Again, we're waiting on the same thing I just mentioned. So we'll switch them on. Basically, when we've crossed those first two hurdles, once the back end stuff is done and the apartments are updated, then we'll give you a time frame on the citizens. But they're there and ready to go. We've got them toggled off at the moment. They're actually in the build that's been released, but we've toggled them off, just as I said, because we're still polishing them and improving them. So RFOX ID, we've got a couple of issues on that, which were just sort of introduced when we did the changes to Cogs Quest, but we've identified those, and we're just working on those at the moment. So if there's any little niggly issues with RFOX ID, it'd be related to that, I'm sure, but we're working on that at the moment as we speak. Cogs Quest bugs are resolved. I think we got a final build today, but I don't know if Phil wants to give you an update on that in a minute. But there was a few things we caught in that first release, a few bugs and issues that that have been reported back to us that we've already resolved. And I think that's pretty much it. The other thing we're working on is, and we don't really talk about this stuff too much, I guess, but building out the process and getting the structure of the team right as well, because we can see there's, we're getting a lot of interest in partnerships and things like that, and it's getting really solid now, and we think we can really start pushing harder on this, and we're just getting ready to grow. So we're just putting everything in place to prepare for that growth and preparing for success. Joe or Phil, I don't know if you want to add anything to the product update.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sure. Just that we're talking to quite a lot of potential integrations, and like we're exploring a bunch of integrations, a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline. Also regarding AI NPCs, a lot of things that's in the work in the lab, and yeah, I'll put together something soon that we can share some kind of concepts with you before we build it out full on. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff coming.
Regarding Quest, we've gotten quite a lot of feedback. So we prioritized anything that affects game balance first, and then we will move on to other. So we focused on the bugs, and then we will start to, after this next release, focus on improvements or new developments. But that should release soon. We'll just have those checks during this week and hopefully release on the next reward change. So you guys will see that soon.
Thanks, mate. Okay, I think that's it from us, Ben.
Awesome. I think it's just to touch on a couple of other points. We are speaking, like, to flesh out what they've been saying as well. We're speaking to a lot of different people, and to Luke's point, that might have caught some of you off guard if you haven't been following too closely. The fact that people want to integrate is all well and good, but like Luke says, it's a matter of what people require. So we've still got a balance of a lot of people coming across. We've got a lot of people looking at us that have experience from other worlds. So it's a matter of them saying, in what fashion do we have to deploy? How can we deploy? But what we're finding, and Luke joined me for a call just before as well, is that people come to us with a very simplistic, simple vision, and then they hear about or see what we've actually got and what we've got in the pipeline, and then their vision quickly spirals, or their appetite grows pretty quickly. So I think we kind of used to have a situation where we'd walk people through or give people a look, and you'd sort of say, let us know what you think, or come back to us, and that sort of thing, or give you feedback that it was early, and they'll come back when they're ready. But now what we're getting almost every time is the people come back a month later or 2 months later and say, all right, we've had to think about it, and this is how we'd like to roll forward. So like Luke said many times before, what people want is very different from one person to the next. And believe it or not, we're still talking to people who see NFTs as PFPs only, that don't really understand, the token gating access, that you can bring them to life, and that it's actually as close as it is. So that's a really full-on thing, I think, is that people are sort of starting to realize that a lot more is going to be possible. And I think, my personal view, and not endorsed by anybody else, I think we're starting to get the first glimpses of what a metaverse could actually be. And you might laugh at that and sort of say, what are you talking about? People have spent tons of money trying to build out metaverses. The product market fit for metaverses hasn't yet been found or proven. And therefore, a lot of what we're seeing now, and a lot of the direction and a lot of the technology offerings, it's up for grabs. The definition of what a metaverse is and does is definitely up for grabs. It's being defined as we're talking. So I think that's exciting that we're in the right place at the right time with the right tech as well. So that's a credit to the team that's been doing the right thing. Luke, do you want to add some context on the picture you just posted for those who listen to it later?
Yep. So people have probably seen some of this. We've been sharing some of this stuff, but this is the latest build that we just merged in with the back end changes and some arcade improvements. So obviously we've got avatars in there now. One of the big changes we did was we replaced the whole back end multiplayer and chat, and talk engine. So the voice and multiplayer stuff is hitting a different server now that's much more scalable, much higher level, higher grade server. So we took that opportunity to start improving some of those other experiences, and mainly Fear and the arcade. We've done some changes to Slam as well, but they're not as obvious. Fear, the main change you'll see is that it just runs a lot smoother. You can just tell, you can feel it. But with the arcade, having the avatars in there made such a big difference. And we knew it would, but playing beer pong or chess with an actual avatar it just makes such a huge difference. Until you actually go and get in there and do it, it's really hard to explain. But again, that's much smoother as well. But everything's changed. So the height of the avatars changed. So we had to, because they're not floating robots anymore, they're normal heights. We had to adjust the height of the pong table. So that gives it a different feel. The way you interact with the food and the drinks has changed slightly. So that it's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of work that's gone into it. And we're just really excited to share it and get people's feedback on it. But early testing has sort of shown us that it's running a lot better. So the sooner we get it out and get some people in there and start testing load on it as well, the better.
Thank you, mate. Also, Redp1ll touched on some of the AI stuff, but ultimately, it's probably good if you ask questions rather than us just keep spoiling alpha, because there's lots of stuff. Yeah, I got a funny DM on that, Luke. The seating position needs some adjusting. So the rate of progress, as you can see each week, is huge, and what you see is sort of in between iterations. So, Luke, what do you think we're ticking along at as far as public release? Like, for every version that people are seeing and using, how many versions do you think happen in the middle or behind the scenes between public versions?
Say 5 to 6 internally, and most of that lately has been we've been running on 2 tracks. So we're doing the back end work and the front end work on two different, or the client work, I should say, on 2 different builds. So a lot of that has been the fact that they're running at different speeds, which for us internally was quite overwhelming, because you've got builds dropping all the time, so often, and thinking about how they interact with each other and how that stuff all gets merged back in. There's a lot to think about there. So the action behind the scenes has been huge. And I think we said last week, we're conscious of the fact that some of this stuff is just being seen in videos and not necessarily making it to these builds yet, but there really is a heck of a lot happening behind the scenes and under the covers that we're sort of holding it back now. It's all sort of piling up at the gates, and we have to sort of control the flow a little bit and not let it all out at once. Just make sure that we retain that stability and we don't undo any of that back end work that we've spent so much time on.
I really appreciate the LinkedIn postings for DAU management. Could you add some? What does this mean? Enable for your business? Give them a slight push towards translating the Vault to a new business opportunities. I see the LinkedIn audience might be different and have a very short attention span. Had a discussion with my IT geeks that don't understand the use cases yet. Yeah, it's a good question, because, like, I'm going to give you a very unorthodox answer that you probably wouldn't expect. And it might seem like a weird backhanded answer, but ultimately all we can do is provide you with a few use cases, because our job is to showcase what potentially can be built with the tools, right? That was all our objective ever was, and then to sort of get the tools into your hands. What they're used for versus so the use cases that actually become prevalent and used and all the rest of it will be decided by the users. And we're seeing that different people want to use stuff for very, very different reasons. Over the course of the years, we've spoken to people from, trying to think of some of the most obscure one, King of Cogs. We've spoken from people who wanted to launch businesses that do bug eating. And I'm talking about like insects as protein instead of meat, right through to people. And you might say, why do you need avatars and a metaverse and all the rest of it for that? I don't know. The fact is, our job's to say, okay, there's these usable spaces that can be developed out in any fashion. Here are the tools that you've got. These are some of the things that can be done with it. There's going to be people coming up with all sorts of use cases as well. So I know that's a little bit of an unorthodox answer, but the thing is that it's going to be the users, builders, and developers that really define the different use cases. We can provide some examples, and they'll be much more, ours will be much more conservative, generic, and safe suggestions for sure and certain. When people start getting in there and building worlds and immersive worlds and stuff, they're going to be wacky as, for sure, some of them. As far as LinkedIn is concerned, I don't know what the rest of you are seeing or feeling or whatever. I'd love to get your feedback, but I was a massive user of LinkedIn and gone off it over the years and gone back and found it to be very different to how it used to be. So it's a lot of spam messages and stuff, and I just don't think the content's as good. But I'd be very interested to hear what you guys think. Luke, or like actually, I think it's a good one to throw over to both. Phil's here, and to Urban Gecko, Pete, and also Redp1ll. You guys that are working on some of the tech stuff, some of the integration of tools and stuff, let's be honest, let's have a real 5 minutes of honesty. How much have you guys seen the potential use cases for what we're building change and evolve, not in a bad way, change and evolve as we've started to introduce or look at new technologies and tools? I'll throw it open to you guys to answer.
Well, for myself, like Ben, I think when you said earlier that people who had a certain idea and then have now seen what we have and then change that idea to be something much larger because of the tech we've introduced, I find that to be true with several projects where originally they just wanted to contribute an environment. And then all of a sudden it's become like they basically want to build their own metaverse with all the bells and whistles. So I think what we're doing is incredible. And people are starting to see that. And it's really changing their scope.
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think it's a little bit like with websites where originally you had to know a lot about web development and it was extremely expensive, and then some websites came out that made it easy to do those things, and suddenly you had an explosion of creativity and new businesses pop up everywhere. And I think it's going to be very similar in our case, where we keep adding tools that are really easy to use eventually, and integrations that make that whole process much easier and suddenly give people access that wouldn't have had a chance before, either financially or from a tech skill level. So yeah, I think all those things it's really revolutionizing everything, and you can also see that new things coming out every day. If you just go to Unity Asset Store, to the AI section, like every week you have new assets there, and we are exploring everything basically to make sure we are always at the cutting edge and not building for something that was maybe working like 2 years ago, but for something that's actually working in 2 years, and that we're not going to be left behind. So yeah, I think we're really focused on that at the moment.
I think it's completely changed, and in the words of Hannibal Lecter, you covet what you see, and I think that's a big part of it. Like people don't know what they want until they see it, and as it evolves, obviously people's ideas and interpretation of what it is change dramatically, and that's just natural. But because it's evolving so quickly, so are people's requirements, and you know, I suppose what people are dreaming they can do, and that's a good thing. I think the fact that it's moving very quickly is a good thing, but from our perspective, we just need to be careful about which path we take and how heavily we invest in a certain area, because tomorrow it may not be relevant. So I think that's our challenge at the moment.
And VALTOX has touched on. Yeah, go Pete. Yep. Go Pete. Yep.
Yeah, just to expand a bit on what Luke just said, right? So for the people like the public, when they see what can be done, then they start churning out ideas. But for us, you know, behind the curtain, building all of this, we're seeing a lot of these things, and we have to decide and pick. Right? We can't deploy everything. We have to decide and pick what we need. You know, what makes sense, what we push out, and you know, 100%, I'm gonna say that sometimes we might make the wrong decision. Like we pick a feature that we push out or build out, and then you know, nobody wants to use it. Right? We could end up, I mean, in that situation as well. Or we could pick something that everyone wants to use it, right? So on our end, you know, there's a lot of evaluation and thought that needs to be put in to figure out which ones could potentially be used. Because at this moment, some of these features have not been made to the public yet, made available to the public yet, right? So they don't know what's coming. And I think that's I think the biggest challenge in balancing, right? We want to put in everything, but we don't have enough time or resources. So picking the right thing and you know, getting that initial feedback based on quick POCs would help.
Pete's point, you've just actually made my response to VALTOX even stronger. So as he said, as you said, I also think it's important that you give simple examples and great tools, as you say. If you, as the platform, force some specific usage of these tools too far onto the public, it might hinder what we're trying to do here. So you couldn't say that any better. And the balance is really hard. And to Pete's point, we've also had stuff in the past or worked on features, as Pete said, that might not necessarily be demanded. But when you've got a ton of people using your platform and you've got a great suite of tools and something exists there, it could well be that the varied and wide audience come in and say, I want to use that tool, but I'm going to use it for a completely different outcome or purpose than you might have anticipated. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. It's a matter of saying, how do we get this into the user's hands, and how do we showcase the power of what can be done? But another previous point that Joe had made, and it was touched on before as well, we used to get projects come to us, and then we'd sort of say, oh, there's a project looking to do this or this, and then you guys would say, what happened to that project? And quite often, as we know, we went through a long, prolonged bear market, and people either changed their minds, ran out of money, whatever it was. But I think, to be very honest and candid, some of them would have said, you have one or two things that I really want and need, and that's great, but you don't have a lot of the stuff that I really need or want for future stuff. Whereas now the situation has flipped. It's now, I was looking at doing a simple deploy of NFTs and displaying them in a gallery, for example, or I was looking at doing something like this, but now you've got me thinking and the juice is flowing, and now I want to do this. And we're still in that stage where people are saying, what can you do to help me do that? And we've got people from other metaverses saying, we'll come across and we'll bring potentially other people across from those metaverses. What can you do for us, or what can you build? So like Pete said, there's a very fine balance between juggling, finishing the tools and putting the power in the people's hands versus saying, oh, well, that would be good. That'd help us get a bit more attention once we do have the tools out. So let's try and help that particular company or person out. And we always err on the side of the first now. We just say, look, we're beelined. We're really, really focused on getting this stuff out to the public, and then everyone can fish for themselves, so to speak. Because one thing we have learned is that sometimes you think you've missed out on a big opportunity, and bigger opportunities just keep coming in. The more quality product and tools that you have to offer, the bigger the projects you're going to attract. There's just no if, buts, or maybes about that.
Yeah, just a bit more after what Benny said, right? Sometimes I think some of the features that we might be thinking of building or maybe have built may be too forward thinking, right? That the community or the existing public is not ready for. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Sometimes it's, we've already built that thing and then we release it and no one wants to use it. But who knows, in 6 months' time, that could be the best thing in the whole wide world, right? It's about, I think this is Benny's, example. He likes to use this. It's about putting the lemonade stand where at the finish line instead of at the beginning, at the starting line, right? So we've already, in some cases, I think we may have already set up the lemonade stand, but there's no one there right now. And hopefully when, the group comes and then maybe in 6 months' time or maybe in the bull market or whatever, it's already ready for us to go.
Yep, that's exactly right. So it's a very interesting period we're in now, because we would have to explain what the end potentially could look like, or the possibilities would look like to people. Now it's a matter of people can see it for themselves, and now you're running to make sure that line comes off quickly. Lala, is Lala here tonight?
Lala's heading to the airport, so she says it's 50-50,
okay.
but yeah, I don't think she's here.
That's fine. What I was going to ask is, I sort of hinted on this last week. What sort of things would you guys like to see as the people that are in there early testing and looking at things? Not necessarily, you're not all builders or creators or anything like that, but what would you like to see to encourage and promote more initial use and eyeballs on the Vault? And again, it's a balancing act, because you want to bring people in at the right time, especially considering I was shocked at how many people are coming in or looking at us now that are actually creators or developers versus general, what I would call the general public or the end user that would come in and say, I'm interested in doing cool stuff. We're getting quite a large number of people looking at saying, oh, I've got an idea and I'd like to build that. But I think that one of the tools that, or one of the things that's opened up with the tools that we're offering is there's a fine and a blurred line between those two groups, because now I could go in there and I'm technically not very gifted at all, and that's a very kind way of saying it, but I can go in there and say, hey, I've got an idea on something I can build, and it's very close to being within my reach to be able to actually be a creator or a developer myself. Which just opens up a massive new market and audience. And some of the people that have got the best ideas don't know how to develop them. And that's why we see these things get developed by people that they're trying to communicate with. If you could do it yourself, it would be amazing. But would love to hear a couple of your suggestions on what you would like to see drive more people in. I don't know if you can spoil any more alpha Redp1ll on what you think or what you're seeing happening in the AI side of things.
Skynet is coming.
What was that, Pete?
I said Skynet is coming.
Oh, okay. Maybe you want to add some context there, Micah, on some of the stuff that you're seeing?
Oh, no, he's there. Just can't hear him. There we go.
Oh, yeah. All right.
He's probably on a
worries.
train.
Yes. There was something wrong with my mic, I guess. Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing is, which hasn't been like fully solved yet, but we see a lot of companies trying to solve the text to 3D. So that's what we're keeping an eye on, like, because that's going to be obviously a big changer. If you can imagine what you do right now with an SDK, mainly one of the big use cases, environments and 3D assets and uploading them. Once that is properly solved, you won't need to go out of your application. So yeah, we see a lot of that creation tools. We're also starting to see things like runtime game development, which is still in the really early stages, but that is also one thing we're keeping an eye on, of course. Like if you can implement some logic that you do in game just using AI without the need of coding, or even visual scripting, just with really basic, text to game, basically. So yeah, it's all developing really fast. Other, obviously, text to texture, a lot of those, where you basically skin AI models, skin 3D models that are already there. You also see a lot with voice, where we're looking into like real-time voice conversions and things like that. Yeah, Micah, do you have some other things? I think you're also keeping an eye on that.
And just to give a little bit more context on the AI 3D model generation, there's obviously generating a 3D model is not the hard part. It's the making it a game-ready asset, and there's a very drastic pipeline. That's why when we see a lot of these demos and things, we look at it at surface level. They promise you the world, but the moment you start looking at what they're actually executing, it's just not anything you can actually use. It's a visual eye candy, and that's as good as it is. You can't actually use it in the game. It's got poor performance. It's not rigged right, or there's no rigging and stuff like that. So on that front of the 3D generation, there's some stuff that's starting to get there now, where there's semi-decent models that could maybe start representing something people could use, but it's, as Redp1ll said, it's still very early. And then there's a lot of stuff being done with voice modulation and live runtime voice modulation and synthesis. So that's also something that you're going to see with avatars and all that kind of stuff. Is going to absolutely pump and become quite a big deal.
Yeah, well, one more I want to mention, which I think we're all pretty excited about, is also basically AIs that can use tools or know how to use APIs and things like that. And we're really moving into kind of the area where you can have agents in the vault potentially. The first papers where they show that you can give an AI agent, just really basic documentation of something, it can, in a self-supervised way, learn how to use it. And if you imagine that in the vault, eventually this could be something like an agent where you just put him into the vault, show him, okay, those are the tools that we have, and then it can basically learn that and use that, and then eventually can be, trained up to do tasks very well, can be trained to play beer pong. So this has been proven in some studies already that this can be done and that it actually works. It's just a matter of how this will be properly integrated in an environment like this, how it can be used broadly, and other things. But yeah, I think it's also one of those really exciting parts. I think, Ben, you're most excited about that one, where we can have the citizens building districts by themselves and things like that.
I don't know whether it's the lazy me or the excited me or whatever, but I just really love the idea, and it may be just the businesses that I've been in or whatever, but I love the idea of taking an avatar, training it, spending time on getting it to perform the way I would like it to perform, and then saying, right, while I'm asleep, build me an environment that looks like this. And then I can come back the next day and say, nah, not happy with that, make that more like this. Or as I start to see the creative process happening, I turn around and say, actually make it more like that. Or, wow, that's good. Not what I thought, but good. Now start doing this. I think it's just good to have, like what happens in the real world, as we know, if you've got an idea and you don't know how to build it, you would go and sit down with someone and talk it through. And then you'd see that iteration process and it would come back. If you've got someone that you can use at your disposal that doesn't take sick days, that doesn't worry about working hours, that can just go, I think that people will invest their time in that, and people will spend time trying to create stuff. And if I can have even the slightest chance, a small percentage of chance of creating something that is better than people that do this for a living and have always done this for a living, then that excites me, for one. If I can be a known game creator, music creator, content creator, purely based on the fact that I bought a dude and showed that dude how to do stuff for me, I think that's pretty amazing. Who wouldn't think that's amazing?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about that is that means that that AI bot potentially can generate its own revenue.
I just want a Jarvis that can power my Iron Man suit.
See, but the funny thing is, we're talking about stuff that 3 or 4 years ago we would have said is the most ridiculous thing in the world. 3 or 4 years ago, we were having to deal with crappy poster-like or banners or poorly hand-drawn drawings to advertise someone's business because they're saying, well, I can't afford those graphic design. Now you've got like the level of content that's coming out and the quality that's coming out is massive. And now those types of things that Urban Gecko is talking about are within reach. It's a matter of just saying, okay, now Artesh is saying, how do you know what data are you using to make sure that you're using the right, you're building the right tools and stuff? So again, I'll get to that question, but the combination of stuff can result in any of these types of things that Urban Gecko is talking about. So as far-fetched as some of this stuff might seem, people will be able to say, I can take that tool, and that tool that you provide, and if I gear them in this way, I can produce this outcome. So the data that we looked at originally when we first started got us to the point that we're at. So I think we definitely looked at the right data. It was a matter of looking at what are the fastest growing sectors of the internet economy. And we sat down and said, where do we think this, if you draw a line out, you extrapolate that out, where do we think this is headed? Where do we think this is going? Now you can say, okay, you got a couple of lucky breaks with COVID and stuff because people were in the online world and they were using online stuff more and more. That's all well and good. But the fact is, we put ourselves in that seat, right, for those opportunities to arrive. And don't forget, we were in the dark a long, long time with a lot of people saying, how do you know what you're doing is right? What if it's not right? What if people don't come around? What if people don't do it? And a lot of you guys that are on this call came in before that was all validated or before anybody was talking about that and said, I like that idea. I like that vision. I can see where that could be a possibility. So I think as far as the data is concerned, the data tells you a lot of things. The Web3 data specifically tells you a lot of BS as well. It tells you, if you followed all of the feedback and all of the data in Web3 that comes out, you'd be building, what, Luke? You'd be building things with paddle pop sticks and sticky tape and balsa wood engines and stuff. It would be, I don't know. You'd either be doing that or you'd be trying to build the Empire State with Empire State Building with matchsticks because someone told you that you could with this awesome new technology. So, Luke, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
No, but I will.
Me.
We'll have a go at that second part of the question about the data that we're using. It's difficult because, again, I think people are using they're coveting what they see. They're using what is available, and they are adapting to the tools that are out there rather than the tools adapting to what they want. So most of what we're doing is discussing with brands, agencies, creators, studios, what they want. And we're collating that data and trying to figure out what the middle ground there is, and what's going to make the have the biggest bang for buck. But even the way things are being developed, and Redp1ll sort of touched on this before, it's not just about which tools do they need, with access to which APIs or SDKs or which prefabs you need to have in those SDKs. All that stuff's great, but we're still just talking about traditional tools, and this stuff is evolving so fast that I don't even know if that's valid anymore. I think we're all sort of questioning that, and with the emerging AI side of things that we've also touched on, does that become the method to build this stuff? And do people grab an asset inside of the Vault and modify it with AI, or build the asset with AI and can populate a space in real time, in game, seeing what they're doing without any code? Does that become the tools? And I dare say in a lot of scenarios, yes, it does. Sure, there's no game mechanics or anything like that on the horizon using that method, but for the majority of people, that's probably the way they want to build and prefer to build. And if we can inject some simple game mechanics in that as well, I think that would cover almost all bases. And then obviously you still need those tools, but are they presented in the same way? And is your audience the same? I think they're the actual questions here. Sorry, Ben, back to you.
No, that's good, mate. And just on that AHA video that you've posted, I don't remember which of you it was, so excuse my memory, but one of you had said, how cool would it be if you could host events in Fear or the castle or different areas? And how is a lore like Fear, that obviously, I know that some of you have sat down and read that, that lore is much more expansive than just the castle game. This is the beautiful thing about what's being done, right? Because a lot of games, worlds, experiences will be built by the creators and developers that come into the space. And if they want to collab or use something for a different purpose, this is where, going back to your point that you just made as well, Luke, this is where people will take the tools and say, hey, I know how to inject lighting and music into an environment. How about we host this or do this? This is the part that I'm really excited about. I've said, for me, personally, I feel as though I'll know that we've made it when I'm getting onto King of Cogs and Redp1ll and Luke and Phil and Pete and all the rest of it, and I'm saying, and Urban Gecko and saying to those guys, shit, have you gone and checked out this thing that's launched? And them say, no, I didn't know about that. And then I say, yeah, it just launched like yesterday or whatever. It'll get to a point very quickly where we, as the internal team that were responsible for building and now only maintaining the platform and offering those tools, will find it hard to keep up with the rapid pace and progress. And when we are as excited end user as every other end user, that's when you know you've created something pretty special, because you're putting on the headset and you're going in and going, shit, I've got to check this out, or there's a great concert tonight, or there's an event that I really want to go and see. And as bad as it sounds, if we turn around and say, oh, we missed that, I didn't even realize that was happening, I can't think of anything that's going to provide more joy. But I think everybody's... Sorry?
Because I better explain the avatar picture I put up, I guess.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I probably don't know what the hell I just put up there, but for anyone that's seen me, this is an eerily accurate representation of me. In fact, it creeps me out. But this is actually a 3D model, a rigged avatar that could be used in any Unity environment. This is a real thing built from photos of me using an AI engine. That t-shirt is an AI t-shirt. This is real. This isn't doctored in any way. And when you actually look at the 3D model, even the profile, my profile is almost perfect. It's creepily accurate. This exists. This is what avatars look like now. This is the next wave of avatars, and this is how they're going to look in the very near future. We've got an opportunity to do a bit of a proof of concept on these things and potentially use them. So this is super duper alpha. Like, this is, we haven't actually got this in yet, but like I said, we've got 3D models that are rigged, so it's very much within reach. So stay tuned for that. But this is really the kind of quality that's available now, and is emerging and coming through. It's going to take people a long time, I think, to adapt, especially for the projects that are a bit further along. They've got all of this stuff really heavily baked in. We've been very careful to make everything we do really modular, so we can rip a component out without breaking everything. And we've actually gone back and done work on making sure that even the early integrations and things we did behave the same way. So we can react to this very quickly, and we're confident that we can get this sort of quality of avatar as an option in the very near future.
Luke, I wanted to touch on that because you've just mentioned this, and Redp1ll can probably provide some more context. But we get both simple to answer questions, tough questions to answer, some good feedback, some bad feedback that's actually good to receive. But one of the ones that I hear a little bit, and I got one last week saying, how come no big brands are working with you yet other metaverses are continually announcing big brands? The thing is, you need to understand how that works. The thing is that those big brands aren't going to those metaverses and going, I'm really excited to work with you, can't wait. It's that their partnerships, deals, advertising setups or structures. The thing is that we've got a situation that isn't seen on the outside yet, but we see on the inside, and that is we've got a realistic possibility of getting genuine brands interested, not paid to come in and do a collab or collection with us or whatever. I'm talking about actually interested, because the interesting thing about all of these tools and the avatar that Luke's talking about and other avatars, there's a lot of companies out there that have created this complicated mess for AI tools. It's complicated. It's very hard to keep up with what's coming out. It's very hard to keep up with which ones to use, which one's better than another. Each of them require you to subscribe or pay or whatever. It's extremely difficult to get a handle on everything that's available. Here's where we have a massive advantage. We have an environment that people can test these things, trial these things, and use these things in. That uniquely positions us, because what they have to do, if you want to think about it from their perspective, is door knock and say, hey, who's got a game or a metaverse that could possibly benefit from using our tool, our offering, our product? Let's go around and see if we can do a deal with these guys. That would be cool. Who's doing 3D VR stuff? Who's doing stuff where we can actually get something knocked up quickly that doesn't require us to work with a team for months at a time? Or who's got something that's not just a decentralized thing that I have to go and try and work out strings of code and stuff to try and work out how to trial this? We've at the moment got a massive advantage, and we can capitalize on that if we can work with groups to say, hey, we can almost instantly, with very little or minimum work, integrate whatever you're offering into our metaverse environment, and we can also offer that on to anyone who's trying to create in the metaverse. That's a very, very unique situation that we have. I don't know if you want to add context to that, Luke or Redp1ll.
No, I think you covered it. I don't know if Redp1ll wants to add anything, but no, I think you covered it.
Yeah, all good. I think yeah, I mean, that's how we're building everything now, that you can plug different things in and out, and that we're really, really quick in doing that. And I can also see it in our team, like how fast we can adjust. Sometimes even, like, I'm really surprised sometimes how quickly we can put in new stuff that comes out. And yeah, I think in that way we're extremely flexible, and that will help us a lot compete in that area, because new stuff is coming out all the time. And yeah, as we said before, like, things that were relevant before will not be relevant anymore. So yeah, it's all about how fast you can adapt, how fast you can change, and I think we're pretty good at that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's an important point for people to understand as well, because the thing is that the other comment that we get sometimes is a lot of people have lost faith in metaverses. Do you think that continuing with the metaverse is the right angle? The fact is that it works in our advantage if other people are stopping creating worlds, because as I say, this AI movement and the Web3 movement's not going to stop, and people need a place to showcase all of these offerings and tools. So I'm more confident than ever, and I'm actually excited every time I hear that someone else is not going down the path anymore or not continuing to build out. I think that's a moral victory for us. We get a tick in all the right boxes. Pete, anything that you want to update from your side?
Nothing much, I guess. I think Luke covered most of it. Cogs Quest, I mean, we're giving away NFTs, Cogs specifically, from the game. It's one design every week. We're gonna run it for. I mean, we've already ran 3 designs as of this week. So the 3rd design is out this week. 2 more designs to go. Then we'll circle back to the first design that we did 3 weeks ago. We're working something for August, something new, something fresh, hopefully. And I think the older OGs would know what August represents. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, cool. Actually, on Quest, I got a question. You didn't answer last week. What level are you honestly up to in Cogs Quest? Honestly speaking, I'm up to level 27. I've just actually gone back and reset and started from 0. And so far, so good. And then it says, how many times have you had to buy? Oh, I've had to buy. I guess this comes about, Phil, because I was continually vocalizing whether it was too hard or easy to get through the levels. I've had to buy 10 moves and 5 moves on a few occasions. I find that the mix is really good. Some levels are. It's a balance, isn't it? Because you want to get 3 stars, so you've got to kind of time it so that you've got enough points to get your 3 stars, but then you also want to kill those dudes pretty quickly. So it's not easy to get 3 stars. But I've got to 27 with 3 stars.
Although once you prestige, the game kind of changes where you don't really care about the stars anymore, and you're going for the rewards.
Yeah, when you prestige, it's a mixed bag, because sometimes you feel like, hey, wait a minute, is this the prestige level? And sometimes you just want to throw the phone out the window.
Yeah.
I think that
Although I'm surprised more community members aren't playing, because and I think that might be because they haven't really seen the pets yet. But I suggest anyone that is on the fence that you start playing now, while the balance is still kind of in favor of the player. So
Phil is using my feedback to balance the game, and I think
It's all right.
more in favor to the game.
That's fine. I find that
I'm about the prestige, Phil.
I find that the hardest levels are the ones. I find the hardest levels are the ones where some of the characters die easily, and you're trying to get points up, so you're in that dilemma of whether you use your skill at the bottom versus just continuing to get the points. So the balance is kind of something you have to continually keep an eye on, and it like does change from level to level. So yeah, if you haven't started it, it's pretty easy to get through it pretty quickly, but would be I'd love to hear what you guys think as well. But that was the question: are you actually playing it, and what level are you up to? So yeah, 27. I'll give you progress next week on where I'm up to. Where are you guys up to, Luke? What level are you up to? Or Redp1ll?
211.
Oh, there you go. Show off. Wish I didn't ask. Redp1ll?
I didn't start again though.
I'm not so far yet.
So what I'm curious about, Phil, I'm at 235, but my name's still not on the leaderboard. So if I prestige at 240, is my account going to get credit when I come back around to 1 again?
Eventually,
Are you on iOS, XP?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's a slight bug for iOS users, but rest assured, you can prestige normally. It's just a visual bug on the leaderboards.
Yeah.
Using Apple products?
Once we fix all the stuff with the RFOX ID, everything should work normally.
Yeah, XP. I'll check it tomorrow morning and try to fix your particular case. But the iOS thing is a pain in the ass. I think we have to fix case by case.
We've
but again,
input his name a few times, and then it disappears after a couple days.
Well,
I mean, I can't see any shenanigans there regarding my account.
Yeah, I mean, no, your account's fine. It's just that it's a visual thing that 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 affects the leaderboard, and it's
Although-
something to do
Now-
with RFOX ID pulling out the data from iOS users.
Just
Lala
is
had
that
experience
only on
with
the-
it.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
just so
XP,
you're
sorry.
aware, once you prestige XP, you go back down to 0 anyway. So it's
Correct. So is that am I only experiencing these issues on the Quest side? Because when I tried to connect my RFOX ID with my Apple ID account, where my name's XP First 25 and all that, it won't allow me into the vault. But I took Rocco's advice and I set up a Google account with just a bland avatar, and I was able to jump right in with my Ready Player Me account. I know.
So this is the vault, right? You specifically around the vault, right?
Yeah, I'm having issues on everywhere.
Yeah. Okay. We'll try to check that out, especially on the iOS, because it is all RFOX ID specific thing, and Apple's not playing nice. But we'll. Yeah. I'll check and I'll ping you tomorrow. And give you an update. XP may not be a
Right on,
solution
appreciate it.
immediately, but I'll give you an update. Yeah. Thanks for bringing
Yeah,
this up.
because I don't want anyone else to have to go through this.
And that's a good question. I got one question to end us on as well, which is a good one. Let me just go back to it so I get it. It's pretty topical, Redp1ll. When will we see Quest in the vault? Will we see Quest in the vault? Who wants to answer that?
Very likely, yes.
So will you be able to play Quest while you're in the vault? You would with Slam or whatever. I think we should clarify or quantify that, Luke, as well, though. When you were talking about is the version of it, because I think yes. I think that you've got to understand that that's not likely to be in VR. Which opens up as far as the topic is concerned, because you want to answer that, Phil?
I was just gonna say, I mean, something like Quest, unlike Slam, would probably be something more suitable for like the arcade cabinet or something you can play on the computers inside the apartments.
Yeah, because that's the question that I got a month or so ago, and I never brought it up because I thought it would be a long topic, which was obviously the Web2s. Will Web2 games or non VR games be available in the vault? I think we've sort of already tackled and answered that. We've already shown that. So I think it's more of a I think it's a lot. I'm very hesitant to go any further into that, Luke, because it's a long topic to open up on, because people will then start to ask what type of games can be brought across, and do they have to comply with the same build standards and all the rest of it. That's why I try to shy away from that one a little bit, unless you want to knock it on the head in 10 seconds. Otherwise, we can save that for next week or whatever, because it's quite a meaty one.
We can elaborate, but it's in short, we don't have an immediate method for converting games that already exist, but we do have a pretty good idea of what of the standards and formats and things that we need for a game to be built in from scratch. So there's a couple of projects we're working alongside who are planning to put something into the vault, and it's just a matter of making sure that they're using our templates and conforming to the basic standards, but any gamification that comes in where possible, we want to make that a prefab, which means we can share that that piece of code with the core vault. That way we're not duplicating this data. So basically when you go in there and you're pulling down these assets, you can pull down something that the vault already understands, that is already part of the ecosystem, and we're not bolting stuff on that requires independent updates. That's a big thing for us, and we've talked about that so many times. But anything that has to be updated as part of the core vault release or triggers a core vault release is a big problem. We need to make these things independent and modular. So that's really the focus for us. And that's kind of probably partly why it seems like it's moving slowly, because we want to make sure that is right. If we start bolting things on that we can't update or service later, that's going to be a massive problem. And we just don't want to start that problem off knowing that, knowing what we're up against. So getting that right is critical.
That's right, personally, I don't see it as a huge success factor to play flat games within VR, at least not until there are good VR native games and experiences. Can't see people using headsets in 2023 to 2028 play COGs Quest, rather just pop up your phone. So it's a good point that you raise, and I think the viewpoint is we've spoken to a couple of projects that have multiple games, like 5 or 6 different. I'll use your term, flat games, that want to sort of venture into the metaverse with no real plan to convert those to VR games or whatever, and just sort of, I think some companies just want to sort of cash in on the narrative of the metaverse and say we've got a presence and all the rest of it. Will that convert to people buying a headset to come across and play the VR stuff? I think that goes to your point as well. If we had amazing VR experiences that they couldn't access, that they really wanted to try, maybe. But yes, it doesn't. I can tell you that it hasn't been a priority for us to sit down with those companies and say, let's beeline you in and get you in and have you with your 6 or 8 games in the vault, because it's going to be a game changer, because it doesn't seem the case for sure.
Hang on, there's a use case. There's a use case we're ignoring, which is if you're on mobile and you're in the vault and you play a mobile game that just happens to load while you're inside the vault, that's a different scenario. And if it's branded alongside an experience, and that the creator of that game doesn't need to go through and get App Store approval and has all the same benefits of using the ecosystem as a VR game does, I think that's still a valid use case, even though it may not be in VR. It could still exist.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's what he's saying. What he's saying there, and I think to that point, I think like Pete said before, you know, if he's pulled up at his he might pull up at his kid's school to pick his kid up or something, and he's got 10 minutes to waste, you're more likely going to go to a mobile version of Quest or whatever, so because you can sit there, you don't have to pull out a headset, and you can sit there and you can pop it up and you can play it, right? But if that happens to be part of the Vault's offering, then that's awesome. That's fantastic. I'm not saying that there isn't a use case for it. What I'm saying is that if that's a company's metaverse strategy, is to bring across 4 mobile games or 6 mobile games or whatever, then it's a lot of work in where we could be spending our time better at this point in time, getting our tools out for sure.
Agreed.
All right, guys, I know we've run over, but thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I know that your time is precious as well, so make sure that you keep firing questions through. You don't always have to DM me. You can also put the questions there. I think it's because you know that I'll mention it if it was mentioned during the week. And Hanford, we're finally going to have a proper party. We'll get back to you on that. Thank you for your time, guys. Thank you to the team for attending as well. Late hours in some of the regions, and we will see you back next week. Can't wait to see some more of these avatar updates and get into those apartments. Play Quest. Have a game. See what you think. We'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, play
Thank you, guys.
Quest. And
Thanks,
take
guys.
care. Thanks a lot. Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.